At the kitchen table, Mom slid a stack of papers toward me. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "Sign this. Your sister deserves the house. You'll never need it." My pen hovered, but I didn't sign. 2 years later, when life turned against her, she arrived at my doorstep with suitcases in hand, assuming she could just walk back into the mansion. She didn't know the deed was in my name, and that choice would change everything. My name is Aaron Miller. I'm 34, and for most of my life I thought being quiet, dependable, and hardworking would be enough to earn a place in my own family. I grew up in a suburb outside Denver in a modest brick house my dad built with his own hands. Mom always said it was a starter home, a temporary stop until the family business really took off. But for me, it was the backdrop of everything that mattered. Birthday parties with lopsided cakes, Christmas mornings in matching pajamas, even the summer nights when I lay awake listening to cicadas outside my window. I was the second child. My sister Melissa came first, 2 years older, louder, brighter in my parents' eyes. She was the golden child, the one teachers praised, the one relatives bragged about. "Melissa is destined for big things," they'd say at family reunions, and then their eyes would slide past me, maybe offering a polite nod before moving on. I learned early not to expect much applause. It didn't bother me, not at first. I liked working with my hands. When Melissa wanted the spotlight, I wanted the workshop. Dad taught me carpentry, and by the time I was 16, I could retile a floor or frame a wall without needing him to look over my shoulder. After college, community college, nothing fancy, I took a job in construction and started saving. Quietly, steadily. The house I dreamed of wasn't a palace. It was something solid, something lasting. For years, I tucked away overtime pay, skipped vacations, drove a truck older than me. By the time I turned 30, I had enough saved to make a down payment on a plot of land just outside the city. I worked weekends and nights, hammering, painting, wiring, pouring myself into a home I imagined would one day be a place where my parents could retire comfortably. When the mansion finally stood finished, with wide windows catching the mountain light, I handed Mom the keys. I thought she'd see it as a gift, proof that even the overlooked child could build something worthy. Instead, she smiled politely, then said words that cut sharper than any chisel. "It's perfect. For Melissa." At the time, I laughed it off, thinking she didn't mean it. But a few months later, she put documents in front of me, legal transfers all prepared. She wanted me to sign the house over to my sister. "You'll never need it," she said, like I was some drifter who didn't deserve roots. My chest tightened, but I didn't yell. I just pushed the papers back across the table. I didn't sign. I didn't know then how much that single decision would haunt and eventually save me. The papers sat on the table between us, a silent wedge cutting the room in half. Mom's hand rested on top of them like she was shielding a treasure, her nails tapping impatiently. "Aaron, don't make this difficult," she said, her tone clipped. "Melissa will appreciate it more than you ever could." That line, "more than you ever could," hit like a familiar bruise. It wasn't the first time she'd used it. I remembered high school graduation, years earlier. Melissa had strutted across the stage in her honor cords, soaking up the applause. I had graduated quietly, no honors, just steady grades and a worn-out pair of boots I'd polished the night before. When the ceremony ended, my parents pulled Melissa aside for photos. My uncle handed her flowers. Someone even brought balloons. For me, a polite pat on the back and a distracted, "Good job, honey." Then there was Melissa's first car. A shiny blue sedan, a surprise gift from Dad the summer before she left for college. They'd tied a red bow to the hood, made a whole production of unveiling it in the driveway. I can still hear the squeal in her voice as she hugged Dad. Me? I bought my own car years later, a beat-up pickup I'd rebuilt from scrap. Mom had wrinkled her nose when she saw it. "That thing looks like it belongs in a junkyard." She never rode in it once. Even birthdays carried the same weight. Melissa's parties had themes: balloons, cakes with professional icing, rented bounce houses. Mine were low-key dinners where Mom cooked something quick, and Dad handed me a $20 bill folded into a card. Melissa was the pride. I was the practical one, the one expected to understand, to adjust, to give. So when Mom leaned across the table with those legal papers, it wasn't just about the house. It was a pattern stretching back decades, a story I'd been assigned since childhood. Melissa was the star, and I was the supporting character who kept the lights on behind the scenes. I looked at her, searching for a flicker of recognition, some sign she realized what she was asking. But her face was calm, expectant, like this was the most natural thing in the world. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't even conflicted. In that moment, suspicion hardened into clarity. This wasn't about fairness or family legacy. It was about Mom preserving the story she had always told. Melissa deserves more. Aaron can live with less. My hand hovered near the pen, but my chest burned. I thought of all the nights I'd worked overtime, the weekends I'd spent sanding floors, the calluses lining my palms. I thought of how I'd imagined Mom and Dad sitting on that porch one day, drinking coffee while I grilled in the yard. And then I saw Melissa in my mind, smiling, stepping into the role of owner while I stood outside like a handyman. I pushed the pen back across the table. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I'm not signing." It was the first time in my life I had refused her outright. After I slid the pen away, the air in the kitchen grew sharp, like the room itself was holding its breath. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, the kind she used when Melissa missed curfew as a teenager. Only this time, the disappointment wasn't for her. It was for me. "Aaron," she said, drawing out my name. "Don't be dramatic. This isn't about you losing something, it's about Melissa having stability. You'll be fine. You always are." That sentence, "you'll be fine," was the exact phrase she'd used 100 times before. Like when Dad co-signed Melissa's student loans and turned to me with, "You'll be fine, your trade school is cheaper." Or when Melissa moved into her first apartment and Mom wrote her a check for the deposit, then glanced at me and shrugged. "You'll be fine, you don't need help with rent." Always fine. Always the one expected to shoulder things alone. I stood, pulling back my chair. I've worked for years on that house. I tore up carpet, fixed wiring, rebuilt that porch with my own hands. And now you're telling me it doesn't matter? Mom waved a dismissive hand like I was reciting a grocery list. "Don't exaggerate. Melissa helped. Too helped?" My laugh came out bitter. Melissa had stopped by one afternoon with takeout coffee, snapped a few selfies on the half-painted staircase, then left before the brushes were even dry. That was her contribution. And yet, in Mom's memory, that somehow equaled my countless late nights and busted knuckles. The escalation didn't stop there. Over the next week, my phone lit up with family calls. Aunt Diane left a voicemail. "Sweetheart, your mother's just trying to keep the peace." "Don't be selfish," Uncle Rick texted. "She's your sister." Blood is blood. Sign the paper. Even Grandma, who usually stayed out of drama, muttered something about how families needed unity more than deeds. Meanwhile, Melissa posted smiling photos on social media with captions like, "Future's looking bright" in front of the house. My house. As if she already owned it. The likes and comments piled up. "So proud of you." "You deserve it, girl." Each one landed like a nail in my chest. The pressure campaign was relentless. At Sunday dinner, Dad tried his hand at it. He cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact, and said, "Son, sometimes we've got to make sacrifices for the family." Melissa's had it tougher, you know? Tougher? Melissa with her fully paid college, her surprise birthday trips, her shiny car at 18? Tougher than me working double shifts at the plant to cover my own tuition and buy my own tools? It was absurd. The escalation reached its peak one rainy evening when Melissa herself showed up at my door, dressed like she'd just come from brunch. She carried the papers, her tone sugary sweet. "Come on, Aaron. Don't make this a big deal. It's just a signature. Mom says you don't even want the house. Why are you being so difficult?" I stared at her, soaked from hauling lumber in the rain, grease under my fingernails, exhaustion in my bones. "Because it's mine," I said flatly. "Because for once in my life, I'm not giving away the one thing I built with my own hands." Her smile slipped, the mask cracking. She turned on her heel, muttering, "Fine. But don't come crying when you regret it." The war lines were drawn, and deep down, I knew. This wasn't just about a house. It was about whether I was willing to keep playing the role they had written for me since childhood, The giver, the one who always folds. This time, I wasn't folding. 2 months passed. I thought maybe the storm had blown over. Melissa stopped posting about the house, Mom only sent clipped texts about church bake sales, and Dad stuck to weather updates. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd let it drop. I was wrong. It was a Saturday in early spring when the truth snapped open like a fault line. Mom had organized a big family cookout, the kind where folding tables lined the backyard and cousins spilled lemonade on the grass. She insisted I come, even calling twice the morning of. Against my better judgment, I went. At first, everything felt ordinary. The smell of burgers on the grill, kids chasing each other with water balloons, relatives laughing too loud. Then, as I was sipping a soda near the porch, I noticed something strange. A banner tied between 2 trees. "Congrats, Melissa! New homeowner!" My stomach clenched. Melissa stood front and center, radiant in a sundress, holding a mock key prop you'd normally see at a realtor's event. Guests clapped as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Cameras flashed. And then Mom stepped up, arm around Melissa's shoulders, beaming. "We're so proud of our girl," she announced. "She's finally stepping into her future. This house is hers now, the one we always dreamed she'd have." The yard erupted in applause. Aunts cheered. Someone shouted, "About time she got what she deserved." I froze, the paper plate in my hand sagging under potato salad. Hers? The house was under my name, my deed. My sweat poured into every wall. I hadn't signed a thing. And yet, here they were, celebrating as if I'd already handed it over. I caught Dad's eye across the yard. He gave a quick shrug, as if to say, go along with it. But the final blow came when Melissa raised her glass, smirking. "And of course," she said sweetly, "this never would have been possible without my brother's generosity." He understands family. He knows I deserve this heads turned toward me. Dozens of relatives waiting for my nod, my smile, my silent consent to this lie. Instead, I set down the plate, heart hammering. "That's funny," I said, loud enough to carry. "Because last I checked, the deed still has my name on it." A ripple of whispers spread. Mom's smile faltered. Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Aaron," Mom hissed under her breath, "don't ruin this. It's family." But the words had already been spoken. The illusion cracked. Cousins exchanged uneasy glances, and Aunt muttered, "Wait, so it's not hers?" Melissa's face burned crimson. She tried to laugh it off, waving a hand. "He's just kidding." "He knows it's mine in spirit." "No," I said firmly. "It's mine in fact. In law, in name. And I never signed it away." The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke rolling off the grill. For the first time in years, I didn't shrink, didn't nod, didn't play along. I stood my ground, and in that moment I saw fear flicker in Melissa's eyes. Because the charade was over. After the cookout imploded into awkward whispers and half-finished plates, I slipped out early. I didn't wait for dessert, didn't linger for polite hugs. I just got in my car and drove, my hands tight on the steering wheel. By the time I reached my place, my phone was already buzzing. "First, Mom, you embarrassed us in front of everyone. Why couldn't you just let her have her moment?" Then Dad, "We'll smooth it over later. Just apologize. You know your sister needs this." And finally, Melissa, 3 texts in a row. "You're pathetic. Everyone saw what you did. Don't be surprised if nobody talks to you again." I tossed the phone on the counter and let it ring itself into silence. For years I'd been the dependable one, the fixer, the quiet backbone they leaned on. Now, standing my ground for once, I'd instantly been painted the villain. The next week proved it. Cousins who usually texted me about job leads or tech help went quiet. An uncle canceled the fishing trip we'd planned months ago. At work, I caught myself checking my phone during lunch, half expecting another guilt-laced message from Mom. When Sunday came, I decided to skip the usual family dinner. At 6:30 sharp, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, she sent a voice text, her tone clipped and cold. "We waited for you. Don't bother coming next week either until you learn some respect." That word, respect, echoed in my chest like a stone. All the years I'd respected their needs, their demands, their silences. And now, because I dared protect myself, I was branded the disrespectful one. Melissa, meanwhile, doubled down online. Photos from the cookout appeared on her feed with captions like, "Some people can't stand to see you shine." Her friends chimed in with comments about jealous siblings, about family drama. Each post felt like a jab, designed to paint me as bitter, petty, small. I didn't reply, but the silence cut both ways. Without me fixing the broken AC unit at Mom's house, Dad had to call a repairman. Without me driving Grandma to her appointments, Melissa had to leave work early. Little things I'd done quietly for years now piled up in their laps. And suddenly the call shifted. Less guilt, more need. "Aaron, the garage door won't close. Can you take a look?" "Aaron, the internet's down again. You're the only one who knows how to reset it." I answered with the same words each time. "I can't help you with that. You'll need to call someone else." The silence on the other end of the line was always heavy, always resentful. But beneath it, I felt something shift, like I was finally taking back the oxygen I'd given away for years. Nights were still lonely. I'd sit on my balcony, city lights flickering, and wonder if I'd gone too far. But then I'd remember Mom's voice at the cookout telling me not to ruin it. I'd see Melissa holding that fake key, and the doubt would dissolve. For the first time, I wasn't isolated because they shut me out. I was isolated because I shut the door myself. And strangely, that felt like freedom. It happened on a gray Saturday morning, the kind where rain streaks the windows but never fully falls. I was making coffee when the knock came, firm, impatient. When I opened the door, there they were. Mom, wrapped in her wool coat, lips pressed into a tight line. And behind her, Melissa, arms crossed, eyes gleaming like she'd already won. "Aaron," Mom said softly, almost rehearsed. "We need to talk." I stepped aside without a word. They walked in like they still owned the place. Melissa scanned the living room, her gaze lingering on the framed photos I'd hung myself, proof of a life outside their orbit. Mom didn't sit. She stood in the middle of the room, pulling a folded document from her purse. My stomach clenched the second I saw it. It was the same deed transfer paper, creased, smudged from being handled too many times. "Your father and we've been thinking," Mom began, her voice threaded with weariness. "Melissa is the one who'll carry on the family. You know that. It only makes sense that she has the house. She's married now. She needs stability. You'll always land on your feet." Melissa's smirk widened. "It's the right thing, Aaron." "Don't be selfish," that word again. Selfish. It landed heavy, like they thought it would shame me into folding. I took the paper, glanced at it, then placed it carefully on the coffee table. 2 years ago, you asked me the same thing. I said no. My answer hasn't changed, Mom's eyes flashed, the softness hardening into something colder. You don't understand. If you don't sign, she'll have nowhere to go. Her lease is up. She needs this house, Aaron. You don't, Melissa cut in, voice sharp. You're living alone in an apartment while a mansion just sits there with your name on it. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? I let her words hang in the air before I spoke. Calm. Even. What sounds ridiculous is the idea that my work, my sacrifices don't count because you've decided she deserves more. Melissa scoffed. Oh, please. You act like you built it brick by brick. I met her gaze. I didn't lay the bricks, no. But I worked 2 jobs to keep Mom afloat when Dad's hours were cut. I paid down the debt so the bank wouldn't take the house. I covered bills while you were out buying designer shoes. That paper doesn't just hold a deed, it holds years of my life that none of you cared to notice. Mom's voice cracked. Aaron, we're family. Families share. I shook my head. Families respect. And you've never respected me enough to see beyond what I could provide. Melissa's mask slipped for a moment, her jaw tightening. She took a step closer, lowering her voice to a hiss. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, don't come crawling to us. I didn't flinch. Better alone with dignity than surrounded by people who only know how to take. The silence stretched. Mom's eyes glistened, but she said nothing more. Melissa snatched the paper off the table, crumpling it in her fist. They both turned for the door, their footsteps sharp against the floorboards. Before they stepped out, I added, That was my last conversation about the house. Don't bring it up again. Melissa spun halfway around like she wanted to fire back, but Mom touched her arm and pulled her out into the rain. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in years, I felt no urge to chase after them. 2 years later, I stood in the same living room, my living room, watching sunlight spill across polished wood floors. The house looked different now. Gone were the heavy curtains Mom loved. Gone were the ornate chandeliers Melissa always insisted gave us status. In their place, clean lines, soft light, and walls filled with my own art and memories. The mansion no longer felt like a burden of expectation. It felt like a home. I'd built a life here on my own terms. A steady job at the architecture firm had turned into a promotion. I'd even started mentoring younger designers, kids who reminded me of myself at 20, hungry but ignored. My circle of friends had grown too, dinners, late-night talks, road trips. For the first time, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. The past hadn't completely disappeared, though. It had a way of knocking on my door when I least expected it. Like the envelope I'd received last month. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Mom's. Inside was a short note, her words uneven, as if she'd hesitated over each one. Aaron, things have been hard. Melissa's marriage ended. The debts are heavy. We need help. Can we come back to the house, just for a while? I folded the letter and set it aside. I hadn't replied. But then yesterday, while leaving the grocery store, I spotted them. Mom and Melissa standing near the bus stop. Melissa's once immaculate hair pulled back messily, her coat frayed. Mom's face lined with exhaustion. They didn't see me, or maybe they pretended not to. For a moment, the urge to walk over, to fix things like I always used to, rose in my chest. But it passed. Because I remembered the knock on my door 2 years ago. The papers slammed on my table, the words, "Don't be selfish." They hadn't asked for reconciliation then. They'd demanded submission. And even now, their letter didn't say sorry. It said, help us. I went home, cooked dinner, and sat at the long oak table that once hosted holidays where I was invisible. This time, it was just me and the quiet hum of the dishwasher. Peaceful. Maybe one day I'll speak to them again. Maybe forgiveness will come. But it won't be at the cost of everything I fought to build. As I set my plate in the sink, my phone buzzed. A text from an old college friend. Big project coming up. We need someone like you on the lead team. Interested? I smiled. Life had a way of offering chances if you stopped letting other people write your script. I walked to the window. Outside, the garden I'd restored bloomed wildly, roses where weeds once grew, ivy climbing the stone walls. It was proof that neglected things could flourish again, given care and time. And maybe, just maybe, that included me. The house was mine. The peace was mine. The dignity was mine. They had tried to take it all with one paper, one signature. But I hadn't signed. And that was the moment everything changed. Sometimes survival isn't about winning a fight. It's about refusing to sign away your worth, no matter who's holding the pen.